Hello and welcome to another episode of Veritas. I'm joined again by Father John. Thank you for being here today. And Father John and I, before we started this today, we were talking about social distancing and how right now it seems like we used to be able to hug and love on one another. And I had told him about an experience I went to Haiti a few years ago. And the one thing I learned whenever I was in that missionary type of work was that Haitians, they measured their love for one another by physical connection, how much affection you show for them, how you try to speak their language even though you may not be the best of it. And I really took that spirit, which really is the spirit of the gospel, to love one another, back to the States with me whenever I got home. And so right now, we always hear this word, social distance. We go to mass, we're social distance. We go to school, the grocery store, social distance. And it seems like we've really lost connection when all we really want to do is go up and just embrace someone and hug someone in that joy and that spirit, and then we get an elbow thrown or a fist bump, and it just feels like we've lost connection, and that's not always the best for our mental health standpoint. And so what kind of advice do you have for us when we're in this period of social distancing? How can we feel connected to one another?
That's actually one of the, I would say, negatives of being in this pandemic. And in our community, it actually made a big difference because as you had mentioned, I'm an Eastern Catholic priest, a priest under the Melkite Church, in full communion with Rome, but we are a different sui juris church. And so we have a different liturgical tradition, but we also have a different cultural tradition. So, as I said, I'm Lebanese, Middle Eastern, and Middle Eastern people are very touchy-feely. When you greet each other, you kiss each other on both cheeks. You're always hugging. As a matter of fact, liturgically, here's a little thing, we have the kiss of peace. And so during the Mass, our liturgy, as an exchange of Christ's peace, our members kiss each other on both cheeks. So all of a sudden, all of this physical connection has been separated. And so how do you manage this distance? Well, just like you can perform a spiritual communion, you have to focus on emotional connection in this time. And then, of course, with those that you can be physically connected with, people in your own household, make sure you're doing that. And with people that are not in your household, make sure you're not doing that. So, as an example, my daughter, I have 4 children. One of my daughters goes to youth group at St. Paul's, and the condition that it was for her to let her go is no hugging. Now, to tell a teen no hugging is hard, but that's what we got to do right now because the virus is out there, and we have to protect our families. And so for many people, this disconnection is a stressor. But how do you overcome it? Just like you can have a spiritual communion when you're unable to receive the sacraments yourself, you can have an emotional connection. So one of the ways that we can take advantage of that is through teleconferencing or FaceTiming. Teleconferencing, I'm dating myself, but that's what it used to be called. That's what it used to be called. And nowadays, with the invention of the smartphone and high-speed wireless and LTE or 5G, right? You can do it from the palm of your hand. So, as an example, just earlier, I was saying that we can use technology to bridge that gap. The churches are doing it in live stream. Thanks be to God. At least people can hear the homily, can see worship, can also worship themselves in that way. And so thanks be to God, a lot of our churches have been able to live stream. Whereas as we were saying earlier, many of them didn't even have websites. And so expanding like that, one of the things that I was able to show Jessica earlier is that I was able to FaceTime with my mom, who's a 92-year-old lady in Montreal, Canada. And it's a challenge to be able to get the technology up, but nowadays with voice commands and voice interface, even a child, can do that. So for us, it was a way to stay connected. Whereas probably before the pandemic, I would call my mom maybe once a week. Now we're talking to each other every day as a way to sort of bridge the gap. And so in this time of socially distance, maybe we can take the opportunity to connect to people that we haven't connected to in a while. And so old high school friends, or friends from where you grew up. Now through Facebook and through social media, we have the opportunity to connect with people in a way that compensates, so to speak. I always like to remind people that we were created not to be socially distant. Matter of fact, if you go through the creation story in Genesis, God created the day and it was good. He created the night and it was good. He created the sun and it was good. He created everything until he created man. Was the first no good. If you follow in Genesis, when God created Adam, it was not good because he was alone. So we are created to be in communion with each other and in communion with God. And so in this time of socially distant, we have to make extra efforts. And so my daughters are spending a little more time on Facebook, and I'm letting them. Whereas maybe, when they were doing extracurriculars, I'll say, okay, time to put your phone down. So I'm being a little more flexible with that. My daughter, I asked her about it. She says, yeah, I'm FaceTiming my friends more. And that's understandable. And so thanks be to God, we have technology that has helped us, I think, get through. I was mentioning earlier, imagine what this pandemic would have been like before the internet. It would be like the Spanish flu. There are more instances of depression. There are more instances of suicide. But imagine what it would have been like during the 1900s, during the Spanish flu, when people were isolated for years. We have science that is working very hard to catch up. And God willing, next year sometime, depending on what news station you watch, we'll have hopefully a effective vaccine. Science will catch up to this. The Spanish flu did not. It had to go through and decimate the population. So we have a chance. We've got to get through this. But in the meanwhile, hug those you can. FaceTime with those you can't. Stay connected by EMS or text message, or find ways, you can even use the U.S. mail, because they're still running. There was a time, my mom said, that even the Canadian Postal Service stopped. They stopped delivering. Yeah. And so, the mail's still going. It may not get there as fast. Use the mail. Find ways to connect, even virtually. My daughter was going to youth group, and they're all outside in the parking lot, separated. There are ways to do it. There are safe ways to do it today. We're filming outside. Thanks be to God, we live in South Texas. So I think the message is there are ways to stay connected. We just have to think outside the box. We have to be creative in the ways we connect. And we have technology. And so it's a tool to connect with friends and to stay connected. I started as an example, I started a Melkite clergy virtual happy hour on every third Friday of the month. And so every third, I set out, we have a Zoom account that lets you invite as many people. So on the third Friday of every month, the Melkite priests in the eparchy of the U.S., we had guys zooming in from Hawaii and Alaska. And those are the guys that really needed it. And so I realized that even for us priests, we are susceptible to that isolation too. And so we'll sit there and we'll talk and we'll just be brothers. And some of them are married and some of them are not. And I could see that the ones that were not really appreciated that Zoom time. And so getting into Zooms, nowadays, even faith formation. There are more online faith formation resources than there's ever been. And so all of a sudden, my newsletter includes opportunities to hear Catholic university professors and Harvard professors and a high level of theological formation that before they just didn't do. So, like I said, it's not all bad news in the pandemic.
Yeah, and I think the church, they've called us to this ministry of presence for a long time, and they've called us into relational ministry, but we've been so locked down to this movement that we forgot about that ministry. We've been given a voice by God, and like you said, Father, He did not design us to be alone. And so now it's time for us to use our voice to build one another up, to be a listening ear when needed. Sometimes we forget that ministry of presence, that when our friends are struggling, even our parents, when they're struggling, that sometimes all we need to do is sit beside them and listen and be that ministry of presence and to be that voice for other people who are struggling. So thank you so much again, Father John, for joining us on another episode of Veritas. We will continue talking about mental health in our next couple episodes. We're doing a little mini series within the Veritas. So if you want to receive more episodes like this, make sure that you subscribe to today's Catholic newspaper and hit the notifications button.
Welcome to Veritas. This is another episode. For more videos like this, follow Today's Catholic on the YouTube account.